So I'm a Spider, So What, or Spider Isekai for short, is a divided show. It is divided in the usage of CG and normal animation. It is divided between the focus on the Spider main character and the rest of the main cast. And finally, it is divided between a fun action-adventure romp and a boringly generic high school isekai. It is so divided that you may be able to claim that it is two separate shows that inhabit the same universe. Think of the difference between a certain magical railgun and Index as another example. Since the show is only 7 episodes in at the time of this video being produced, we do not know when the two sides will finally meet and their plots intertwine, if they meet at all that is. So the question is, can such a divided show work without feeling like you're watching two separate anime being mashed together? To start with, something the show does to try and keep the two sides of the story from splitting apart is by linking them with common threads. An easy example of this is when the dragon appeared to take back her apparent child Faye in the human side of the story, it is immediately juxtaposed to the introduction of another dragon, Araba, in the spider side of the story. It is as simple as X appears in the human side, therefore it needs to appear in the spider side to link the two stories together, and vice versa. This simple structure does keep the story somewhat together in regards to narrative themes, yet, at the same time, those themes are explored in two very distinct ways. The spider side of the story tends to focus on how the things are acquired in the world, such as the taboo skill, and the variety of different types of monsters that can exist, whereas the human side tends to focus on lecturing the viewer on why certain things are bad to have, such as in episode 5 where Yui lectures Shun on why the taboo skill is bad from the church's point of view. This decision by the anime to have two similar events from each side of the story be linked by having them occur chronologically close together assists in making the anime feel less divided than you'd expect from having two separate stories exist side by side. Furthermore, one thing that the show does do to emphasise that there are two parts of the same series is to endlessly repeat that the school children on the human side of the story were reincarnated. This is such a small thing that does a lot to keep the series together, as the human side of the story always links it back to the reincarnation and how it has affected them, such as one of the children Yuri becoming incredibly religious due to her social isolation when she was growing up in the world, or Faye being a monster and her subsequently blaming her past actions for being reincarnated as one, along with her and Shun actively wondering if any of her other classmates were also reincarnated as monsters, followed by the show immediately cutting back to Kumuriko, reminding the viewers that she was in the same classroom as them and that she drew the short straw in regards to what she was reincarnated into. However, something which does undermine the unity of the show is the usage of CG, which is used a lot in the spider side of the story compared with the human side. This is obviously done for convenience, as it is a lot easier to use CGI to add in lots of monsters rather than to individually hand draw hundreds of them, especially when time is of the essence. Nonetheless, it does cause the series to feel like two separate shows, as the art style can be radically different between the two sides of the story, with the usage of CG backgrounds during the magma scenes involving Kumiko feeling like a different world when compared to the hand-drawn classroom scenes in the magical school. This helps to exacerbate the differences between the two places, as the art styles begin to represent the two types of anime they are combining together, one being a generic isekai and the other being a comedy adventure romp. This does dissipate as the anime goes on, with the series introducing other non-aligned characters such as Shun's brother Julius and the Demon Lord. Both help to break up the idea that the show is split, as they do not really fall into either category, as Shun's brother has an enjoyable adventure outing in his first appearance, and the Demon Lord's first appearance spends time just showing us that she exists. This introduction of more point of view characters helps to dilute the division between the two sides of the show, as the side characters are not limited to only appearing in either the school or Kumiko's adventure, giving us the feeling of a more expansive world, as prior to this the anime had only name dropped some vague places when the human high school characters were introduced at the start of the first episode. It gives off a feeling similar to Overlord, where it is slowly expanding the world outwards, and you may not understand everything at the start, but it will be explained in due course. That is how the show is progressing, as although the start of the show comes off as very divided between two points of view, later on it becomes more apparent that it is just building up a richer world for the characters to inhabit, and the split point of view at start is just done to provide an introduction to the main characters, as without it you could easily get confused about what the isekai world is like, and why these human characters are so important to the story. So to conclude, the anime does feel like two separate shows at the beginning, despite its attempts to bridge the gap between the two sides of its story. Yet as the story moves on, the anime does become less divided, as it introduces new characters and expands its world. So does the show work as one anime? Yes, it just takes a while to get there.